Big changes are coming to the Big East. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get into the show, a couple of quick notes. The support on YouTube has been amazing, and I'd love to see all my subscribers also downloading the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. It's a huge help to make the Locked On UConn audience grow. So if you can do me two quick favors, first click that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen, then head over to the Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button. This way you'll never miss a moment of Locked On UConn. Help us and continue to bring the content you love. Your support means everything to me, and if you're listening in any audio device, car, phone, transistor radio, please take a moment to drop us a 5-star review. All the feedback helps, and it's much appreciated. Special shout out to my everydayers, especially Palmer. Palmer, your dad, Sean, who I've known since high school, sent me some great pictures over social media of you meeting the UConn team at a restaurant in Boston the night Alex Caravan threw out the first pitch. So I really appreciate you, Palmer, and your father's support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay, guys, listen. So today's episode is a little bit interesting. The Big East is about to sign a new 6-year media rights deal with Fox, NBC, and TNT. This is a conglomeration that is now in a new agreement that is set to begin in 25-26 after next year, and it will run through the 2030-31 season. So, key points. The media partners in the financial terms. Obviously, the Big East has been on Fox for a while. I know some of us missed that ESPN aspect of things, but let's be honest. You guys get a lot of media on here, on YouTube, all over the place, spaces, different podcasts. The Big East current deal with Fox and CBS is worth around $500 million over 12 years. That's wrapping up. So this new contract is supposed to, from what I'm hearing, reports are saying, significant increase in rights fees, almost to that $1 billion mark, and it's only for a 6-year term. So if you think about it in terms of just dollars and cents, this is a huge windfall for the Big East and the Big East sports. Fox remains the lead network, so you're going to still see our guy John Fanta and others that we love, like Donnie Marshall, maybe not. Tim Brando, those folks. Also, CBS is not going to be in the mix. They're out. NBC is in. CBS will not be a part of the new deal due to an inability to agree on a smaller package of the rights. So where CBS loses out, NBC jumps in. We'll probably see a little bit of who's the guy from NBC football, his son, who does a lot of Notre Dame stuff, Collinsworth. We'll see if he does in the NBA in any college games. We'll see. I kind of like this. You know, it's the NBC TNT, so maybe we'll get some Kenny Smith. Maybe I know Charles Barkley's supposed to retire, whatever that means. But it'll really diversify the conference's media partners and likely increase a lot of exposure. I mean, these are big cable networks, a lot of money on the table. So this is, again, I can't emphasize this enough. In a basketball-only league, essentially no football. The only teams that play football in the conference, UConn's an independent. So securing this deal is absolutely crucial for the Big East, especially as college sports media contracts become increasingly more lucrative. So unlike power conferences with football, the Big East solely focuses on basketball, making successful media negotiations vital for its stability. So again, Big Ten, SEC have struck massive deals worth over $1 billion annually. This new contract is supposed to touch that $1 billion mark. So the financial disparities that we see and that we've been talking about on this show and others between the Big East and other conferences is going to shrink a little bit. So part of this, though, and why it comes at such a great time is the Big East faces these antitrust issue challenges where, there was a settlement that's going to require non-Power 5 schools to cover 35% of nearly $2.8 billion owed to former athletes from 2016 to 2021 who didn't get into the NIL, world, right? So this financial strain adds to the importance of securing such a favorable media deal. So what does it all mean? It just means that UConn can continue to do what it does, making the Big East the best basketball conference in the country, kind of keeps the regional aspect of playing rivals like Providence, St. John's, Georgetown, that those type of matchups aren't going to go away. And unfortunately, if they did go, it did have to move on to the ACC or the Big 12. Those would. So it gives them, in the short term, some stability for the next 6 years. That is assured. But beyond that, the landscape of college sports remains uncertain. So while we'll stop talking about this, especially as more details come about, but my biggest thing is I wanted UConn and the Big East to be proactive. So this is a big first step, securing their survival for the next 6 years because of this money that they're going to get from all this exposure in multiple different cable networks. I think it's a phenomenal thing to be on, not only just on Fox, but on NBC, TNT. I'm sure there'll be some streaming options too. And this can kind of quell any of those ACC Big East rumors, at least for now, or UConn to the Big 12, as I've heard. The new deal really positions the Big East well and amid that shifting sports structure in the short term. But long-term planning still remains critical. So I do think the Big East is going to have to find what I would consider an exit strategy, in meaning the UConn aspect of this thing. If the rumors are true, and what I mean by that about rumors is apparently from people I've talked to, there's a lot of buzz around this UConn football team. If UConn, I feel like they're doing this for this reason. UConn football is been as bad as it's been for the last few years. And I know Jim Moore is trying to do his thing, and I know there's a lot of positivity around the program. If this UConn football program wins 7 games, 8 games, then you start to kind of look at them in a different light. Then the larger conferences start calling, and then maybe UConn's in business in terms of their long-term ability to be a viable big-time program, not just in basketball, but in everything else. But as you all know, this is primarily a basketball show. So we'll recap our conversation with Tobias Bass on yesterday's show on recruiting and review those that we talked about and that are most likely the next members of the UConn family. Coming up after this. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and sports aren't sporting the way I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone. Every day, all summer long. I'll tell you what I thought. I'd like to see those UConn three-peat and double dip with the women title futures and add those as a parlay right now. Get your best odds. But tonight, if you're a baseball fan, I think I would be looking, even if you're a Red Sox fan, I know there's a lot of you out there. Garrett Cole is pitching against the Mets. They're minus 1.5 runs at plus 110. That sounds pretty juicy. Or just the minus 145 for a Yankee win. Thank me later on that. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, we're back. So yesterday we had Tobias Bass. He's an analyst and a recruiting expert for The Athletic. I really wanted to go over some of the folks that we, that we talked about. I think Dan Hurley and company, unless they get a Donovan Clingan type, are looking for impact wings, guards as freshmen, and then adding transfer pieces like Terrace Reed Jr. That's my thought process and what they've shown just kind of in their recruiting profile. And they, in a perfect world, I think that's kind of what they're looking for. I feel like with a big, it's a little harder to transition from senior year to freshman in high school, from freshman to college. And I think you see that a little harder with bigs. I mean, look at Donovan, for example, phenomenal player, just absolute impactful get for UConn, two years, 2 national titles. But he had kind of that buffer year, right, where he was playing 10, 12, 15 minutes a game because he had an incredible player in Adama Sanogo starting. So he really didn't have to come in and say, all right, kid, it's your show. So I think that's part of it too, is like kind of layering it where a guy doesn't come in and have to be the man coming in as a big. So let's go over the 3 players we talked about yesterday, and we'll have some audio from yesterday's show and visuals, obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, to remind you of who they are and what they do, and also just some cool stories that that Tobias posted on or talked about on the show yesterday, just to kind of go through that. So the 3 names that we're going to talk about: Malik Thomas. What we love about him is he's an absolute hooper, all 3-level scorer. Tobias gave us a fantastic story about Malik Thomas with Carolina legend Kenny Smith at the Pangos All-American Camp. Let's listen to that, and then we'll recap it.
And then him as a player, I'm a big fan. He really can score the ball. But what I like about him, besides the basketball, because we know he's great, is just him as a person. So at Pangos a couple of weeks ago, Kenny Smith was going over them like pick and roll coverages on offense and defense. He was the first to volunteer. He messed up a couple of times, but he was willing to learn. So he told Kenny, like, hey, no, I want to do it again. Like, I want to get this down. So he made a conscious effort in front of, everyone. The NBA scouts there, other kids was there, and he made a conscious effort to do it. He wants to work on those things. So you can tell that he's a gym rat. And third of all, he's a great teammate. I mean, at a camp, it's kind of, camps are typically, you can be kind of selfish at a camp. That's kind of the culture of it. He wasn't like that. He was picking up teammates, high-fiving them, where he was on the bench, he was cheering and jumping for his teammates like it was nothing. So he's a great overall player and a great kid as well. So I would definitely like to see him in a UConn jersey for sure.
If that doesn't scream UConn Husky, I don't know what is. If it wasn't just his competitiveness, but his willingness to be coached, I really wanted to reiterate that today because, man, if you're Dan Hurley or let's say Kamani Young was there and you're watching that and you're like, man, this kid is the first one in line, the first one trying to get this done, putting himself out there, not trying to seem too cool for school. I think that's kind of the biggest fear sometimes of these kind of 5-star recruits is that, you feel like they're prima donnas. And I'm here to tell you guys that whenever we start talking about 5 stars or the best players on the board, I inevitably get comments in my YouTube. Oh, well, we don't need all that. Guys, the best players in the country want to come play for UConn. Give the coaches an opportunity to vet out who they want and who they think is a fit for their style. If it's AJ DeBonsa, who we're going to talk about in 2 seconds here, if it's Malik Thomas, if you don't like the way they play, tough. I don't care. Nor does Dan Hurley and Kamani Young and Luke Murray. They are going to bring you the best players they possibly can, and they're also going to find the players that have exactly what Tobias just talked about, a willingness to learn, a willingness to be coached hard, the ability to put yourself out there and be a good teammate. If that doesn't scream UConn Husky, get your brain checked. Your brain's broke. We need to get you figured out because, guys, if we want the best team possible, you need talent. It's not just all about development. That's what you have your transfer portal for. Your freshmen come in and develop, but sometimes a freshman can come in and do things a la Steph Castle that are just not guys that are 3 and 4 stars don't have the same ability that Steph Castle has. So let's relax and not worry about the label of 5-star and let them go get the best players possible. Rant over. Now to go into another big-time name, AJ DeBonsa, right? Also, wait, real quick. Malik Thomas, the breaking news, Kevin McPherson of Arkansas Hoop Scoop said that right after Malik Thomas had his official visit with UConn, which ended, I believe, last Friday. He was supposed to be in Arkansas today on a Tuesday, the 25th, that he's not coming. And but is going to try to find a different day, and he doesn't have that plan yet. So that was reported on Twitter at @rhoopscoop. You can check him out, Kevin McPherson. Seems like he's pretty connected and plugged in. I saw that all over the internet. Definitely double checked on that. That is 100% true. So I don't know if that screams our guy is going to commit, but I like our chances there. But are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 and on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so Malik Thomas looks like, I would say it's an 80% chance he's going to be a UConn Husky. So let's get around that. AJ DeBonsa, the biggest fish, the number one kid in the class. UConn is going to continue to be in the mix for the best player, as I just mentioned, every year, just as they were last year with Cooper Flagg and as they will be with AJ. I don't necessarily think UConn is the best fit or likely that he'll go there, maybe a 25% chance. But if the number one pick in the draft and one of the best players that people have talked about over the last 15, 20 years is wanting to come, Dan Hurley and his guys can keep developing 4 stars. But if you have the number one pick in the draft and he wants to test out UConn, you make the time and you figure it out. Here's a great story from Tobias on AJ working out with none other than Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon. Biggest fish in the pond is AJ DeBonsa. Am I saying his name right, or am I saying that wrong?
Yeah, AJ DeBonsa, yep.
Okay, so he's been linked to a lot of teams. You got to think that UConn coming off back-to-back titles. I have heard about him potentially being a UConn, target. Who, obviously, who wouldn't want him? But my thought is, Dan Hurley's been to almost every one of his games. Like, it's almost been on purpose, right? So he's local. He's originally from, I know he's not there now, but he's originally from Massachusetts. What are your thoughts? Give the rundown there.
I mean, that kid's unbelievable. I mean, he's one of the better high school players I've seen in a while. And I hate comparing high school kids to NBA players just naturally, but he kind of has some Paul George in his game. He has, he's very similar. He's about 6'8-ish, 6'9-ish, put the ball on the floor, score from all 3 levels. He's the number one player in the country for a reason. And I know that he's starting to partner up with Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon actually is going to probably start mentoring him in the very, very near future. So that'll be interesting, the footwork, him, developing into a college player, developing into a pro. So that's definitely something fans of him should keep an eye on, because I think Hakeem's going to start taking him under his wing in the very near future.
So you're telling me he's going to Houston is what you're telling me.
I don't think he's. I mean, selfishly, I live in Houston, so selfishly, that would be really cool. I don't think he'll go to Houston. But.
Okay, I mean the dream, man. Like, that's why I was like,
for sure.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. 0 to 100% chance he goes to UConn. Give me your percentage.
I don't want to say 50. I'll give you in the 30s, 40s, because he has so many options, right? He has everyone recruiting this kid, so it's nothing that UConn will be right in the mix. I'm assuming, but he just has every school recruiting, so it's going to be a dogfight to get him.
I see it. I mean, it could be one of those things where it's like, what's the like when it's I think it's a meme right now. It's I sent it to my wife. It was like, how did you land your wife? And it's the Dumb and Dumber meme where he's like showing himself off at the bar. Like, UConn doesn't have to do that. We don't have to do that right now. Like, so
no, right, right.
If that's what it's going to take, maybe they're like, we'll go with some other 5 stars and some transfers and figure it out from there. So forgive me for sending the other the funny humor around the Dumb and Dumber meme where he's putting out the vibe. So but yeah, I mean, AJ DeBonsa is a fantastic player. He's going to have about 100 people, 100 schools, 100 coaches, if not more, looking at him, wanting him. I've heard he wants to. This always freaks people out in the fandom world. He wants to be featured. Who doesn't want to be featured? You're the number one pick in the draft. You're trying to, guys. I just want to say, when we're talking about these players, I don't compare myself to these elite athletes, but there's a finite window for one to play professional sports. I did it for 2 years. These guys have an opportunity to play for a lot longer than that. secure huge amounts of money, and really kind of put themselves in a position to be set up for life. So relax with all the stuff where, you want kids who are kind of lunch pail guys. Lunch pail guys are great, but you also need some guys who can put the ball in the hole. So the last guy we talked about, who I think is an intriguing one, who I'm sure a lot of you guys will love because he's not necessarily a project, but a 4-star. His stock is rising. Braylon Mullins. He screams Husky. He's a Cam Spencer clone. I made a reference to Deron Shefford because of his body type and the way he shoots. So check out what Tobias had to say yesterday. I'd love to see them get a kid like Braylon and turn him into an absolute killer. 6'4". What are your thoughts on him and the recruitment potential at UConn?
Big fit. He's kind of similar to what they've had in the past. 6'5". He really can shoot it. Knows how to play good on and off the ball. Really, really can shoot the ball. He makes sense. I like him. I like him for definitely as another fit. He's from Indiana, I believe. It's going to be hard to pry him away from the Hoosiers. I know they're going to be really, really recruiting that kid, but I think UConn makes sense. I think that he would be a perfect fit with the Huskies.
Sorry for the mobile version of that, but you get the point. Braylon is an interesting kid. I think he's a better ball handler than what people will give him credit for. But I think he definitely needs to work on those things. I think he definitely needs to work on his footwork coming off of screens. But yeah, Braylon is a legit shooter, and I think that they could do wonders with him. Because some of the guys they got in transfer and some of the guys they got in from a couple years back only have so much eligibility. So it would be great to start the clock over with a kid like Braylon Mullins. We'll keep you in the loop as time goes on, but let's move on to the players that have brought us 2 national titles over the last 2 years and who have moved on to tomorrow's NBA draft. We'll talk about where I think they will all go coming up after this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for any winning championship is also about what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle leveled up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Bring home huge wins and keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Okay, we're back. The NBA draft is tomorrow, and we have quite a few interested parties that are looking to be drafted, 2 that are guaranteed to be drafted. I think we could get all 4. So let's get into it. The first player in the NBA draft, I believe, Donovan Clingan. We're going to add him to the stage. Yes, Mr. Clingan, if you're watching on YouTube, you see a picture of him. If you're not, we're showing a picture of Donovan flashing the Connecticut logo on his jersey. I think he'll be the first pick in the NBA draft. His upside with his offensive ability will be too great of a, where NBA wants you to be is they don't draft you for what you are now. They draft you for what you can be. So I think his ability to play pick and roll with potentially Trae Young, also step out and be a plus 3-point shooter. I know that's something that he is working on diligently, is going to be the reason that they pick him and really the reason why they should pick him. Because even in the absence of that, his defensive ability is off the charts. I do think, though, the only way they don't pick him 1 and they go Alexander Sarr, who's also 7'1", and more of like a wing player, is if they're really trying to delay their rebuild. Because I know that's the Hawks were in the Eastern Conference Finals only a few years back, so he could step right in the starting lineup and anchor the defense immediately if that's the direction they're going. So I know those talks are being had as we speak. Which way will they go? I think the smart money is on them picking Donovan number 1 in the draft and being the first UConn player to be the first pick in the draft ever. The next on this list, Steph Castle. Let's bring him to the stage, right? So Steph is, I think he's an all-around player, but this whole, I listened to a yesterday, and people are worried about, I guess he's scared off a few teams who have point guards already. The idea that he can't be a point guard or that he's not a true point guard is laughable. That's what this kid is. He is the quintessential point guard, especially at the NBA level. Do we not? I mean, there aren't any more Chris Pauls anymore, but Steph Castle is a 6'6", potentially 6'7" player who can play defense on anybody. Can he be an off guard? I think so. Can he be a wing? I think as well. But I also feel like he is the type of player that wants to be in pick and roll and wants to be making the decisions, and that's what he's talking about. And I don't see the problem with that. Like unless you're on a team with LeBron James or Paul George or some of these big time wings that are 6'8", 6'7" that can bring the ball up the floor as well. That matters. So I know we've talked about him not going to Charlotte, but I saw an intriguing pick if he was there at 6. I definitely think he's going 4 to the Spurs, but just hear me out. I know some people are ready to pull their hair out if another UConn player goes to Charlotte. But the reason why I say that is because LaMelo Ball is not a point guard. I don't care what anyone says. So if that kid is healthy and you put Steph at the 1, you put LaMelo at the 2, and then you put Brandon Miller at the 3, that's a potentially 3-person core that if LaMelo starts to, I don't know, be a serious basketball player, not just ride his go-kart over on in his penthouse in Charlotte, as I've seen video of, I could definitely see that being a young core that could be a playoff-ready team down the road. So it could be fun to watch, but I do think he goes to the Spurs, and the reason why I say that is because, this idea that Reed Shepherd is a better player or more NBA-ready is laughable. I just don't see it. Better athlete, Steph Castle, better defensive player, better decision maker. When it mattered, he was a better player. I don't see a Steph Castle led team if he plays on that Kentucky squad losing to Oakland. That's just me. I also think Greg Popovich's history of using ball handlers make Castle kind of a natural fit. He's used players like Jeremy Sochan and Malachi Branham to be in similar roles in terms of like bigger guards that are actually forwards that are bringing up the ball. Castle isn't known for his 3-point shooting, but who cares? I think once he gets into the mix, he is an absolute great form. He's got an incredible first step. I think he'd be fine, and he'd obviously be an incredible fit with Victor Wembanyama. And who else do they have? Devin Vassell. I would love to see Steph. We talked about this about a month ago, going to a team like Greg Popovich and the Spurs, because you want them to be in an organization that has these players to be in an organization that has some form of direction. And I think San Antonio has proven with their 6 championships that they are actually 5, right? 5 championships that they go in the right direction when it's the time. So already a fantastic defender. I think he would be, I think Marcus Smart is a really lazy comparison. I think he's more Drew Holiday. And I've said this over and over again, and I will continue to say it. I think his ceiling is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because I think he's got that same mentality and that same ability to change pace when he dribbles. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day, all with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Before we go, obviously, we have our two more draft eligible players, and we're going to put them on. Cam, Spencer. Where do I think these guys go if they get drafted? I was looking at teams that have multiple second-round picks, and I believe, because I saw a video of it, both Cam and Tristan played or worked out for the Indiana Pacers. I think we will see Indiana is going to select Tristan Newton at 49 and Cam Spencer at 50. Back-to-back picks. I think this team values character guys, hard workers like TJ McConnell, and they run an offense where if you're open, you shoot it. And you work to find your hot spots, but if they let it fly. They're the type of team that, where Tristan and Cam can hone their skills and let it fly with absolutely no conscience. And if that's the case, I'll be the first one in line for Cam and Tristan's jersey. I feel like they also play great together, so they could anchor and bolster a second team that needs more firepower off the bench would be an absolute perfect fit, and I'm here for it. I really hope the Indiana Pacers do it. Got get at least one of these guys to make our dreams come true, at least, of having a couple of these guys play on another pretty solid franchise that was just in the Eastern Conference Finals. I said this in a couple draft profiles that whoever drafts Cam Spencer will be the best decision they ever made. And I stand by that. I think if you draft, you got to draft winners, even if they don't play that much. I mean, it just creates a culture in your locker room where they're coming from winning programs. That matters. And guess who used to sell that? John Calipari used to sell that to his 5-stars, so his freshman classes that would come in and say, the NBA values players, no matter how talented you are, that come in and play at that level, but also values winning and coming from a winning program. So I think that could be the case here, and I think that's what UConn is turning into. Well, guys, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Let's get Tristan out of here. I wish you the best, guys. Wishing you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.